It's playing out in the Senate right now, which is because the government can't get a deal with the opposition, they are now, of course, turning to the Greens, and then it'll be Pocock and Lambie and Thorpe and all the rest of it, on two pretty big things, right? One, which is this fiddle around of the Reserve Bank, and then secondly, the establishment of a brand new Environmental Protection Agency. Let's deal with the questions in and around the RBA first. The Greens leader
have the power, and it's there for a reason. It's there because in emergencies and in crises, and we're saying that people are at breaking point and are in a crisis now, in the middle of a cost of living and inequality crisis, Labor's saying they want to take their hands off the steering wheel even more, and we're saying no, that's not the answer.
And Tanya Plibersek about the negotiations with the Greens around the EPA and a climate switch that would be built into things.
I've got to be clear, we are in intense negotiations right across the parliament. I'm not going to pretend to you that there's no discussion of climate considerations as part of this negotiation. I can't pretend that.
So let's step back a little bit. Let's take the 30,000-foot view of this. Bronwyn, the Liberal Party obviously thinks we're not going to help you stuff things up, so you have to stuff them up with the Greens, the Teals and others, because then we can go to an election and say, vote for us and all of this goes away. But of course, potential changes to the Senate, let alone the fold over of half Senate, means the chance of there being a centre-right majority after the next election in the Senate, probably unlikely, meaning you'd be stuck with this stuff and you'd have to say, well, look, we tried to change it, but we can't. So what do you think the strategy is here? And do you have to negotiate in order to make it better for when you eventually take over, or you're just trying to throw as many bricks in the backpack of the government?
Look, you've got to understand what's really going on here. Albanese's leadership is toast. He is so bad that you've got people counting numbers.
Wow.
Now, Chalmers and Burke have been out there putting their case forward for a long, long time. Plibersek thinks she's in the mix. Now, if you're going to be in the mix, what do? You've got to be hard and strong. You've got to be different. So, stop the mine, say we're going to put in the climate trigger if you don't give it to us. This is all about positioning. So, that's the Labor Party position. From the Liberal Party's point of view, they've got legitimate reasons to say no to what's being proposed. I'll say now, I do believe that Dutton has got the ability to form a government. And I do think that Victoria, down your part of the world, Stephen, is going to be very bad for the Labor Party.
Really?
And the anger against the Labor Party down there is so great that the Liberal Party, that the federal election is going to become before the state election. And I think a couple of others have pointed out that the last time this sort of happened was when Andrew Peacock won 9 seats in the 1990 election, which occurred before Geoffrey Kennett. Now, the reason I remember that so well is I was very much in that election with Andrew Peacock, and New South Wales failed to win a seat. And that was for all sorts of other reasons, which I won't go into tonight.
Yeah, but what's fascinating about what you're saying there is there's some polling out today that yet again shows the Allen government going backwards and with a massive number of undecideds, but potentially what that Piscito bloke may well end up being the preferred premier, which is...
Oh, you've got Joan Kerner Mark too.
Oh, well, correct. All right, Stephen, lots there, but to the tactics around all of this, right? You obviously want to get an achievement through. You have to find the numbers to get it through. But don't the Greens make everything worse when you're going into a tight election, let alone what happens in 3 years from now?
Look, I mean, there's absolutely a clear and present danger to Labor if they were to form any sort of ongoing relationship with the Greens. And I know Bronwyn will start interjecting any second, but if we could just put that aside. So the sort of mistake that we made in 2010 was to sign a formal document with Bob Brown. That was a mistake, and we paid a heavy price for that. So I don't think there's any danger that Labor would form any sort of overarching relationship. The Senate, no party has, I think Howard had it for a few years, Fraser had it for a few years, but apart from that, it's always a negotiation to try and get legislation passed. And sometimes you have to accept amendments you might agree with. Now, I don't agree with the Greens on much, as both of you would understand. On the Reserve Bank Board issue, I could live comfortably with keeping that reserve power. I don't think it's been exercised. I don't think it means anything in substance. I think that's why Jim Chalmers said, look, it doesn't really matter. But if we were to say, no, let's keep it, it's been there under both Labor and Liberal governments before. So if that was the cost to fix Reserve Bank Board's stupidity,
that's only part of the sticking point.
Then no, well, there are other parts, but that's the one that was on
stacking
on
the
clip.
board and not leaving the current people who are setting the interest
Bronwyn,
rates.
the board has been stacked by the Liberal Party for 10 years. A bunch of Liberal Party flunkies are there. So please don't go, oh my God.
That's only part of your attack on the Reserve Bank. You do it every night.
So, no, well, I'm happy to do it again. I've got a whole list of things here I can go through right now.
I'm running out of time. It's not that I want to silence anyone.
So,
you got 30 seconds.
So on the Reserve Bank, on the Reserve Bank Board, that is actually an outcome I think is reasonable. So I don't think the Greens' position is outrageous on that one. On the climate trigger, well, I think there's a lot of dangers in
Big
that,
danger.
and the party would struggle, and the Liberals, if they were to allow this to be the price, the Liberals would pay the price for this down the track as well. So they've got to make a tough choice whether they want to live with something that is bad for the country in the future, or they're prepared to negotiate.
Well, that's the thing. You got to view it about that teal section of things, let alone obviously the National Party. We're sadly out of time. I know you're ready to go. You got plenty more, but I've got analysts standing by in DC.
I've got a list here. I've got a whole list on the Reserve Bank.
I have no doubt. All right, thank you guys. Love you both. We'll see you again next week.
I was just going to tell you, they can move another disallowance motion against the mine.
Oh, yes, of course they should do it. Do it as soon as you possible. Thank you, C. Some free advice. Appreciate it.